This is the part 2 of our graphing functions. Cubic function. Now, let's look over here and we have y equals ax minus h cubed plus k. This is our turning point or vertex at hk. I am going to make this very simple at y equals x cubed. If I plug in 0, 0 cubed is still 0. If I plug in 1, 1 cubed is 1. Now notice I added in some extra lines because cubing a number makes it go up very quickly. Okay, so I've plugged in the point 1, 1. But when I plug in 2, I go from 2 to 8. So this is why we needed those extra points. When I do the negative side, I have negative 1, 1, and I have negative 2, negative 8. This is all connected with a nice smooth line, a very smooth curve here, increasing, turning, increasing. Now remember, this can be moved right or left or flipped, but we're not quite there yet. We're just learning how to graph. The next one that we have is our square root function. Y equals a square root of x minus h plus k. K is outside. But notice I'm going to graph y equals the square root of x. When I plug in 0, the square root of 0 is 0. When I plug in 1, the square root of 1 is still 1. But I'm not going to pick 2 and 3. I'm not going to pick 2 and 3. I'm going to pick 4. The square root of 4 is 2. This gives us 1, 2, 3 points, and we connect them with an arrow to show it goes on forever. Okay? Now we're going to come over here to simple rational function. And we have y equals 1 over x. 1 over x. We cannot plug in 0 because that breaks one of the rules of math. You cannot ever divide by 0. So we're going to plug in 1. And we have the point 1, 1. Now look, if I plug in the point 2, okay, 2, then I'm at 2, 1/2. And if I plug in the point 3, I'm at 3, 1/3. But what happens if I go the other way? Maybe I put 1/2 underneath. So this would be 1 divided by 1/2. And back in elementary school we learned 1, change to multiplication and flip. 1 times 2 is 2. So if I plug in 1/2, I'm coming up here to 2. Now remember, I can't be anywhere on this 0 line. So this comes around like this, very much like this. It hovers the x-axis and it hovers the y-axis. It doesn't cross. Somebody's going to ask what happens if I plug in a negative. The same thing that happens when you plug in a positive. Okay? If I plug in 1, negative 1, I get negative 1. If I plug in negative 2, I get 1/2. And if I go the other way, then I'm going to end up with 2 and 3. I'm again going to hover. Hover, hover, hover. Just like this. I'm hovering. Okay? So, I need you to realize these are increasing and leveling out to be constant. Okay? These are leveling out to be constant and decreasing. And decreasing. I want to make sure here, let me pull in closer, that when we do this, 1 divided by 1/2 becomes 1 times 2. Division goes to multiplication, and we use the reciprocal. So 1 times 2 is 2. You should have one more graph, and that's for exponential. And that's for exponential. And this time we're going to have y equals a to the x. Let's fix that. Okay? y equals a to the x. So if I have a nice number, okay, if I have a nice number and I do this and I say that I have y equals 2 to the x, we're going to make a 2. Then 2 to the 0, 2 to the 0 is 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So we're going to go over here and I've plugged this in. 2 to the 0 is 1. Now, if I plug in 2 to the first, when I plug in 1, I get 2. And again, if I plugged in 2, I'm going to go up here to 4. I'm going to go up here to 4. And I'm going to have this lovely graph that's going to go up very quickly. Very quickly. Okay? What's going to happen if I raise this to a fraction? What's going to happen if I raise this to a fraction? Well, then I would have something like 2 to the 1/2. And 2 to the 1/2, 2 to the 1/2 is the same thing as the square root of 2. 2 to the 1/2 is the same thing as the square root of 2, and that's already on your graph. Now, can I have a negative? Can I make this 2 to the -1? And the answer is yes, I can make this 2 to the -1. This is 1 over 2. So if I have -1, I'm at 1/2. Okay, and my graph is going to hover, and then it's going to go way up very quickly. It is not going to cross over the line. It is not going to cross over the line. This is exponential. Let me bring you in a little bit closer over here so you can see that this is 2 to the 0 is 1. 2 to the 1/2 is the square root of 2. And 2 to the -1 is equal to 1/2. Now, you have all of your parent functions and you have all of your graphs that you will need for the majority of this course.